Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Defion Productions podcast. I'm your host, the hardest working nobody in Bitcoin, Don Rinaldi. We did have a guest scheduled for this morning. However, last minute back out on the guest. Missing Troy this week as well. He's got something going on where he's at in his undisclosed location. So you just got me and you just got my producer, Rich, as we will take you through the last week in crypto. In Bitcoin, we will start with the price. There's been a lot of price action this week. Very, very good price action. Bitcoin, as of this recording, is sitting at $67,085.90. We were in the last 24 to 48 hours around 68, and we were up probably around 4,000 to 5,000 this week from where we probably were 7 days ago ish. I could actually take a look at that on here and see. Let's go to Bitcoin. And of course, I screwed that up. So let's go. Awesome. We're live and screwed it up. All right, there we go. Back to Bitcoin. So let's click on Bitcoin and take a look at the 7-day. Bitcoin is up from 60.69 thousand 7 days ago to 67,000. So we're up 6,000. We're actually up more than that. We're actually up 10.47% in the last 7 days. That's how fast things can move in this ecosystem. I guess we could say October is back on after the first half of the month looking like we were going to miss out on it. So that's good. I want to start at a spot because, it's just me today, so I get to choose. I want to start with a debate that happened 2 nights ago in Massachusetts with everyone's favorite senator in Bitcoin, and I'm saying that in jest, Senator Elizabeth Warren. She was debating John Deaton. John Deaton is an attorney who was prominent in the XRP versus SEC case that he won, and he's challenging Senator Warren for her seat in Massachusetts, and they had a debate 2 nights ago, and there's a clip that's going around Bitcoin Twitter. It's about 8 minutes long, and it's specifically talking about crypto and Bitcoin. And I think personally, because I watched probably about half an hour of this debate, basically waiting for the crypto part and then kind of tuning out a little bit after that. He absolutely, and I know I'm biased by saying this because I'm a Bitcoin guy, but I mean, anybody that watches that back and forth that knows nothing about Bitcoin and crypto would think that one person knows what they're talking about and the other one is clueless. And that's basically the takeaway from that conversation. She talked in circles. She tried to deny, even though you do a simple Google search or Twitter search, and you can see that she had a ad that she was running in 2022, basically saying verbatim anti-crypto army. And he called her out on that. And she tried to say that she wasn't anti-crypto, even though she had ads that said as much. So she talked in circles. He kind of backed her into a wall, and he obliterated her when it came to Bitcoin and crypto. She tried to attack him because apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but even if it is, I don't think it matters as much. 90% of his donations have come in the form of Bitcoin and crypto. His comeback to that, which I thought was brilliant, was, yeah, I mean, when you go after a certain demographic and attack them, they're going to probably back the side that isn't attacking them and trying to tear them down, which is why they're endorsing me and not you, which I thought was a great comeback to that, which makes total sense. And he also called her out on a lot of the really good thing that he brought up was the fact that banks like TD Bank, which was just they had a multi-billion, I think it was like a 1.8 or $2 billion judgment against them for a litany of felonies and crimes that any individual would have done. They would have locked him up and thrown away the key. Things far worse than even SBF did. And he talked about how she takes money from the banks and how she doesn't have anything to say when these banks do all these unfair practices to investors and, defraud investors and do all these things, that you're just focused so much on crypto in this industry that's literally a $2 trillion industry. And you're kind of turning a blind eye to this multi-$100 trillion industry. And he's like, why is that? And she really did not have a good response to that. She talked in circles, and he even brought up the fact that she but she was supposed to be grilling JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, and instead handed him softball questions and allegedly even gave him questions she was going to ask before he was testifying. And he brought up the fact that his company was found liable in one of the only cases that has been brought forth in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and was litigated. And they were found guilty of providing funds to Jeffrey Epstein and his companies to do all the things that they were doing. And he asked her about the relationship that she has with Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan. And again, she talked in circles and she didn't make herself look very good. So unfortunately, though, she's so entrenched in politics. She's so establishment. She has so much money behind her. Um, it's going to be really, really tough for Deaton to beat her, I think. Even with the momentum he's getting from Bitcoin and crypto people, I will be genuinely surprised if he wins, although I'll be extremely happy if he does. I don't have a lot of faith in the voting system and people coming out and supporting Deaton the way that they should to knock her out. I'll end on this last point in regards to this debate. I thought one of the poignant things that he said was she was attacking Republicans specifically on in the Senate, and he was like, "Yeah, they suck." He's like, "And Democrats suck too. You all suck. That's why I want the job." And I thought that was great. I thought that was brilliant. Like he's basically calling everybody out, and he's like, "Yeah, you're right. The Republicans are doing a bad job, and so are the Democrats, and so are you. And I'm coming to take your job to fix things." I thought that was good. So I'm hoping Massachusetts comes out and votes for Mr. Deaton and ousts the biggest threat that I see in government right now to crypto. It looks like the Harris administration is softening their stance on Bitcoin and crypto. And I think the only adversary that we truly have outside of Gary Gensler is Elizabeth Warren. So if we could get her ousted, I think that would be smooth sailing in regards to the political landscape. What do you think of Elizabeth Warren, Rich? What are your thoughts on her just politically?
Switch to my shot. I'm not a big fan of Warren. Just never have been. And not even because of any specific policies. I just don't like these lifeline politicians that don't really seem to stand anything. I don't. She acts like she's a what they call in my mind a shit lib. She's not. She says she's a liberal, but she doesn't really believe those policies. She doesn't try to enact those policies as much as she could. She just kind of counts on folks that are Democrats to just vote for her because she's not them. And that's what I don't like about the Elizabeth Warrens. And obviously she's got way too much influence and things that she's done to kind of control things like crypto, like, like stuff that she's kind of done to keep it down. She's clearly had too much influence and been able to do some insider trading. It looks like things like that. I didn't know too much about the guy that's running against her. I've just been Googling it while you were talking about it. And as a former educator, I like what he had to say about education. That for the last 20 years, 25 years, we've been teaching kids to take tests instead of teaching them to learn because all of this accountability. And I'm not saying teachers shouldn't have accountability. I'm all about accountability because there's some bad teachers out there. I worked with some of them. But we went so far into the weeds on testing kids that the kids are learning to take tests. They're not learning to be problem solvers.
He's a very inspiring story. If you go a little bit further, he comes from a very, very modest background, addiction in his family, extreme poverty in his family. And he basically went right from the bottom depths of society, ascending to a pretty prominent attorney, at least in the crypto space, litigating pretty big cases, having success, and now running for one of the biggest jobs in government, which is being one of those 100 senators that are in the Senate. And giving it, from all the polls, at the very least, even if he loses, he's giving Senator Warren a run for her money. And she is one of the most, I hate her guts. I think she's absolutely awful. She epitomizes what's wrong with government, in my opinion. But I think the fact that he's giving one of those individuals that holds that much power a run for their money is very, very something to hang his hat on, even if he doesn't win this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the problem with these folks that are in there for so long, that they just have such an apparatus behind them And this is on both sides. This isn't just, like the Chuck Schumer's been in the Senate for 25 years. He had just had his anniversary, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know. I don't, I don't like,
How
I
many
don't
years?
celebrate. I think it's like 25 years he's been a senator.
I'm surprised it's not longer. That's actually surprising.
Maybe I got
thought
it.
was
Whatever it
I thought
is,
was
it's
more than
too
that.
long.
Yeah, of course.
And it's all of them. Like, I don't care. All of these guys and gals, like they're, and some of them, like, what's his name?
Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell, like unplug him, restart him. It's like the equipment here in the studio when it freezes. Like
He buffers when he talks. He's buffering. Yeah.
and then, but
It's
then they
pathetic.
also had what's her face from California,
Feinstein.
Like
They were rolling her out literally from the crypt.
It was, and I that type of stuff is just crazy to me. I think there has to be. There has to be limits on this, because let's be honest, like, I'm sorry, once you're in your 70s, I don't want to say that old people shouldn't work, but old people should not be running something that complicated like the government.
We need more AOCs, even though I ideologically disagree with her. We need more JD Vances. And I'm saying we need more 30 somethings that are in government. Even if I don't agree with them ideologically, I would rather take somebody with very shitty politics in their 30s than somebody that's just entrenched as an octogenarian that's just making policies that are not going to have any effect on them because they're going to be dead in 5 or 6 years.
Right. Like things like government and stuff would be interesting to me if they like if the new folks came in and basically said, okay, from this point on, we're going to have these new rules for income, because you're never going to get stuff passed with the people that are already in the chair. So you almost have to do it like you have to grandfather those folks in and say, everybody else, yeah, you guys you were the last ones to get the perks. And now we're going to start. And I think those types of politicians, if some of them would run on, when I get in there, I'm going to push for this. I'm going to push that for campaign reform is just a waste of time because they'll always find a way around it. But like this stuff with stocks, that stuff that they own, but also then, limits on terms. Let's say you were a congressman for 12 years. Pick a number. I don't know what the number is. All right. You got to get out of Congress. You can go run for Senate. Good. Go run for Senate, because at least it's a different job, but you can't have that same position for that long. Like, you got to get out, even if you have a thing where you got to get out for 10 years, you can run again in 10 years, but you got to get out of the system. You can't have a government job. You can't go and become somebody's professional assistant. You got to get out. There's got to be a way that they could regulate it better.
The paradoxical problem with that is the very same people who hold the keys to making the decision to change term limits are the same people it will affect negatively, because the only thing that can happen by putting term limits on is reducing all of the wealth that they accumulate. And who the hell is going to sign up for that? One of the biggest perks right now of being in Congress is the fact that you're going to just multiply your wealth by an immense amount of money, regardless of the side that you're on.
Yeah.
It's just holding on to that power as long as you can to make as many relationships as you can and build as much money as you can, get as much inside information as you can. And sometimes people are just like, no, I'm good. I'm just going to stay here forever. And some do move on, but they accumulate the power that allows them to do so, which is everything that's wrong with government, in my opinion.
Yep. I mean, it's definitely, I don't know. I was saying to my son yesterday, we were talking about this very problem that, like, I'm 57, and I remember when, like, my generation started to get involved in politics, and, I had high hopes that we were going to be different than the previous generation, not just in politics, but also even in corporations. And I feel like my generation, folks that grew up in like the, 70s and 80s, like, we almost are worse, like, in the sense that the CEOs that are in our generation are significantly richer than the CEOs of 25 years ago. Like, they've incredible, and the wages of their workers haven't kept up. But then you also have the politicians of the same thing, where like the influence and the wealth of politicians has also grown significantly in this same current generation that's running things.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things wrong with government, with politics. One of the main reasons it's funny because I've had, my mother hates when I say this. She thinks it's anti-American that I say it, but it's one of the main reasons why I just think this election specifically is voting is just like going out and voting is a vote for continuing the circus. I feel like voting in the general election, not necessarily all this is just a general election take. I should probably specify that. I think voting at the top for either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump is you saying I'm okay with the circus. If you want to vote downline for your local stuff, if you want to vote for your senator, like all that shit, like that's different conversation.
Yep.
But top of the ticket, like voting for this travesty of a top ticket that we have, I think is just saying, yep, I'm okay with the circus. Like we're just going to keep the circus going. And I'm just not. I'm not in that. I'm not going to give my vote to say that what's happening is okay because I've been on record over the airwaves many times saying that I think both sides are not what we need. They're not pushing us forward in the direction we need to be pushed. Just because one side is so extreme and ridiculous doesn't mean that we need to just bury everything behind this one guy's ideology to say that he's the answer to it all. No one person is the answer to anything. And the cult-like nature to think that it is just beyond ridiculous to me to think that that's a thing. And I won't support that either.
Well, there's that rhetoric that he's going to fix everything. Okay. First of all, he's one guy and he's old. He's older now than Biden was when Biden took office, right?
So we run into the same problem in 3.5 years.
And he does not look good.
Agreed.
He looks terrible.
Agreed.
And I'm honestly thinking if he gets elected, he won't survive the 4 years. Because it's a stressful job. And even though he doesn't seem to be that concerned about doing the job at times, because he golfs a lot and all that stuff, you still got to get up at, you're up early, you're up late, you're going to all these things.
I agree with you on that, except for the fact that like his lifestyle, you're making good takes, but the only pushback I would give on that is that he's been doing that his entire life. And there's a lot of negatives about Trump. There's a lot of bad qualities about Trump. But one of the things that's kept him so like the vitality of him has been the fact that he doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He's never done any drug. Like he's that background that he has with his family of like the substance abuse of his brother dying had such a profound impact on him that he literally puts outside of like food wise, he doesn't put anything bad into his body.
I just think the level
slow
of
him down.
Stress, even there's no way to avoid that stress.
There isn't, but he's been dealing with it for 40 something years.
I think the level of dealing with a real estate deal to building whatever versus dealing with North Korea and those kinds of things that you have to do. And you don't have and I think within his realm of business, these were things he wanted to do where there's too many things that he can't control, that this is going to happen in South America. This is going to happen in the Middle East, and it happens at crazy times. And there's things you have to do. And ultimately what it comes down to, the president doesn't run anything. Like he can try to put a bunch of people in to do things, but at the end of the day, like the people that think he's going to fix everything, he's not going to work in every department and he's not sitting down with his assistants that are running the environmental agency and say, I want you to do, he might have one meeting, but then he's got to count on those people to do it. And I'm not sure that most of the people get jobs in government are all that efficient.
What's wild when you really break everything down, his movement and his ideology is one of the biggest reasons why he'll never be able to do all the things he wants to do, because he's divided things so down the middle and made people so anti him. Like you have Republicans, not just Democrats. You have Republicans that are just anti-Trump, not anti-Republican Party.
Right.
You have all the anti-Republican Party, but then you also have the anti-Trump. So you've made things so like down the middle divided that any good things that he wants to do, and there are good policies that he has that he supports that I also support. I want to be clear about that. There are things that he did even the first term that I support. So there are good things that I would like to see him do. He'll never get them done because there's just so much. His ideology is so one way that it's like my way or the highway, and that works in business when you're trying to like move people around and you're trying to get your way. Like muscling people in business definitely works more than muscling people in politics, because even though you're the president and this guy's a senator from Podunk, wherever, those dudes got power too.
Right.
And your power isn't impressive to them. And
Right.
they're able to navigate this. Like there's people in the Senate on both sides that navigate, or I'm just Congress, that can navigate relationships that when we see them, we think they hate each other, but they got some shit going on in the background that they're pulling strings that we don't even see.
Oh, sure.
That
Yeah.
will make it so hard for your life to ever be able to do whatever you. So you need a president to be, and again, even Biden, who I despise his policies, and I think he was probably him and Carter, two worst presidents we ever had, like policy wise, in my opinion. But what Biden was good at, if he's good at any sort of things, was attempting to make relationships with the other side. It comes with 50 something years in politics. I mean, you kind of just like fall into that. But like the fact is, you want that quality in your leader because you want him to be able to say, these are my policies, these are my stances. But I also have to recognize I have 10 things here I want to do. There's 2 that I had that are they're non-negotiables, but the 3 that I really, really want, I may have to negotiate less for and give them some of the 2 that they want in order to get in the middle. Where Trump's like, I want all 10. I don't give a shit what you say. You're an idiot. I'm going to make up a name for you. Like, you're stupid. Like, I want all 10. No. And then just talk. And it's just like, dude, that doesn't like, it works in business, but it doesn't work in politics.
No, it doesn't work. And you can prove that from the standpoint of most of the things he said he was going to try to do in his first term, he really didn't get done. Like, he kept saying
he wanted to do it, I'm sure, but he couldn't.
Well, things like he was going to change whether Obamacare or whatever is good or not.
Well, that when he had no plan.
But he said like, I'm gonna, like, next week it's coming out. It's like taking my kid. We're going to the park next week, and then we never go to the park. Like, bad parenting. Like, I don't know. There are things he did accomplish that he said he was going to do, but most of the things are. And then when you like the wall, for example, the wall was going to get built and everybody else was going to pay for it. And they built some of the wall, but a lot of that wall was already there. But a lot of that wall was already budgeted.
Mexico's never going to pay for it. Like, that was just stupid to even say that. Why even say it? Like,
but it's because he's smart enough. He knows how to say things that people want to hear who don't really understand anything about the way government works. Like, they don't understand the way. If you've been to Washington, D.C.,
mm-hmm.
Have you ever just driven around
mm-hmm.
and you see the size of these buildings that are government buildings? These organizations are tremendously large, incredibly complex bureaucracies. And I don't care who's running those divisions. There's like, thousands of people in these divisions that are, some of them are probably very effective workers, and some of them are probably very inefficient because they've been there and they know they've got a government job, whatever. But one guy, one gal isn't going to change that apparatus because, like you said, there's too many people that have a chip in the game that they've been there for 20 years. They're going to be there in another 10. And they know you, president, whoever, you got your 4 to 8 years, and basically you don't necessarily have control of the purse strings anyway, because you may or may not have control of both houses. So you may not be able to pass anything anyway. And so stuff just sits on a shelf or in a drawer for 3 years until we get to the next election. Doesn't get done,
Did you see his project? The next story that I was going to talk about. Did you see his crypto project this week?
No, I did not.
This is this perfect example of one of the reasons why I have a problem with him. I talked about this during the Bitcoin conference when he had his Bitcoin crypto speech, and I was just like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, he's just like, he's running a con, basically. Well, this week.
Yeah. Before you get into it, like, he does stuff like, and he says like, yeah, that guy's great. Oh, wait, it's a girl? Like, that happened with the rapper the other way around. He had the one rapper that he brought to a thing, and he's like, she's wonderful. And then the guy came up on stage and he was like, who's this dude? Like, he didn't say that, but it was like, he just says things that people want to hear. And he's been a salesman for so long, he gets away with it a lot. But he's doing the same thing. Probably, I'm going to predict.
Always trying to sell something. He's either trying to sell himself, a product, an idea. Like, he's always on a sales call, I feel like, when he's speaking. Well, this week, and again, I said this when he spoke at the Bitcoin conference. I said he does not understand Bitcoin, because if he did, he would lean into Bitcoin only, and he wouldn't be out here talking about crypto and all these other shitcoin stuff. Like, oh no, he understands it. He's got Vivek, he's got RFK. I'm like, RFK and Vivek speeches were eons better. RFK's was way far in the way the best political speaking Bitcoin only speech that I heard at the Bitcoin conference, and Trump's was just flat, and I thought it sucked. Well, he released a crypto project this week, a crypto project, right? And his crypto backed coin had a $300 million sales target. You know how much they raised of the 300 million? Want to take a guess?
Out of 300 million,
300 million was the goal.
under 10%.
12 million. So the tweet, Trump's crypto project was a flop. All the insiders who were looking to dump on retail are probably sweating bullets after this, but it seems like people are finally figuring it out. There is no second best, Bitcoin only. So again, like Trump and Donnie Jr. have been talking about releasing a crypto project, releasing a crypto coin. And it's like, you're running for president of the United States. Why are you even getting involved in trying to like release any coin projects? Like, let your family do it. You know what I mean? If your son if Barron wants to do it, because Barron's like 19, like it would make sense for Barron to be in that stuff. Don Jr.'s my age.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, even him's kind of weird, but like Trump is like talking about it, associated with it. You're running for president. And like in crypto, there's so much. Again, as a Bitcoin maxi, it's easy for me to talk about this, but I'm sure even crypto guys, if Troy was here, he even talk about it. There's so many rug pulls in crypto. Like, people will release these coins, try to get some celebrity to put themselves behind it,
right?
Pay them a little bit of money with the entire goal of whatever money comes in.
Super Bowl a couple years
yeah,
ago.
whatever money comes in, they're going to take it, and you're going to be the exit liquidity, and they're going to rug pull you.
Right.
Like, that's the whole point. So for Trump to, and sometimes there's even not even that being the intention. People really want to create coins, and they try to get somebody involved because they want to have a successful project. And then people come in, and then the same thing happens. The coin goes to zero. It's just, these coins have nothing. These crypto coins are trash coins, and you have Trump come in and back this project, and it only makes 12 million out of 300 million. But it's like having these conversations with people, like, he doesn't get it. If he understood Bitcoin and he really got the thesis of Bitcoin, he wouldn't be even wasting his time with any crypto projects. And it just proves the point that Trump is, again, it's the greater point that I make. Trump is a grifter. This is what he does. Yeah. He doesn't, he may have things that he believes in and thinks about, but he's always going to gravitate towards the things that he thinks the masses are going to love. And that's where I don't know what he actually believes and what actually he's just saying to try to get votes or trying to get people to like him or whatever the kid. Like, I don't know what that is.
And it's funny because as you're talking,
I don't know where that line is.
When I think of the Democrats on the other side, and again, like, I was a registered Republican for a long period of time in my life and left that party because of various reasons. And
You're a registered Republican?
I was a registered Republican.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I grew up Reagan. I liked the way Reagan.
My favorite president.
I have issues with Reagan, but he was a man of his time. But it's like not liking John Wayne because he said inappropriate things in 1930. Yeah, because he was a man of his time. Yeah. And that's my problem with Reagan.
Yeah.
I do think Reagan.
Iran-Contra was.
I also think that's an example of he probably knew it was happening, but not to the extent
he knew.
I don't think he knew a lot of the day-to-day operations.
Way he didn't know. Well, maybe that, but like
he probably green-lighted it. I'm sure guys came in and said, "We're going to do this thing." And
I don't want to know the details.
Yeah, and he was smart enough to say, "I don't want to know the details because they're probably going to end up in trouble."
Yeah,
and there was the problem is that's like they all did that. Every single president has done one of these doofy, stupid ass things. He happened to just get caught.
Yeah.
But he also understood, and you talked about this earlier, that he didn't always try to get everything he wanted. He would sit down with Tip O'Neill, who was the leader of the House, and they would yell at each other.
Yes.
And
very legitimate political rival who, when he got shot, came to his hospital bed and they prayed together, whatever your religious stuff. But like, O'Neill was genuinely concerned about Reagan when he got shot.
Because
can you imagine,
whether you like Tip O'Neill or whether you like Ronald Reagan, they both really did like the country.
Love the country.
And they
Yeah,
felt
absolutely.
like their job was to take care of the country. And unfortunately, that's the difference between that generation. And I'm not saying those people are perfect. I don't think that those politicians were, but at the same time, I think they were much better at trying to make. I mean, you can, and Reagan did terrible things to unions. So I have issues with him with unions, but so I'm not saying he's perfect, and he did things that his constituency wanted him to do. But I also think that those two understood the concept of that politics is the art of compromise. And now we have politicians that don't feel that anybody should give in to anything. And then my problem with like the Democrats is that they just have continued to take their constituency for granted. And they're like, hey, we're your guy or we're your gal, but it's like, but we're not going to do that right now. Like we're not going to go that extreme. We're not going to say no to things that we know are wrong because but we're still better than those guys.
How about Barack Obama having the audacity to speak to black men in a way of basic? I mean, Biden said it out loud in 2020, so it's already been said.
Right.
It was said by a white man, and that was super cringe. But like specifically by a black, like when Biden said, if you're not voting Democrat, or you're not black, or something to that extent. I'm paraphrasing, and then Obama basically speaking to all those black guys, basically saying like, you're black, so that means you have to vote Democrat, which means you're not allowed to have a mind of your own, which means you're not allowed to think anything different. You have to think one way, and that's it. Your skin color means that you vote Democrat. You're not like, so what? Every white person is supposed to vote Republican? Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Supposed to.
That's ridiculous. It's an awful take.
No,
it's terrible.
Everybody should vote their conscience on what they, and it's funny.
The audacity to say that.
I remember when Obama became president and he gave a speech to high school kids. And he talked about responsibility, and he talked about going to school, and he talked about all these things. And it was very much directed at young black males. And he said some good things, but it played poorly. And he never, ever did anything like that ever again. Because now he's just a podcaster. Like, where's he been? Carter's been building houses for the poor and shit since he left office.
Best post president in history.
Carter? Oh yeah, he's
probably the worst, if not Biden. In one of those two is neck and neck. Nobody touches Carter post presidency.
Yeah.
Nobody touches Carter.
Nobody even. Yeah, right.
More than made up for his bad 4 years.
The reason why Carter was bad was because he was not ready for that job. And I think like he had some good ideas, but he had no
world
ways
events
of implementing
world events
things.
Were occurring during his time that he wasn't equipped to properly handle. If those events didn't happen and he had like a clear 4 years, we would think of him much differently.
Specifically Iran.
Yeah.
And then the attempted rescue of the hostages, which was the worst disaster in military history of the United States up at that point.
And Bay of Pigs was probably worse, but yeah, I see what you're saying. You're right.
That was just
close.
But what that exposed the United States as is a military that was very out of date. And people really said, oh my God, like this country. And again, this was post Vietnam and all that stuff too. So there's this hate for the military in general at that time. And I think that's what Reagan was very smart and seized on, about bringing back America as this positive force. And we're going to rebuild our military, and we're going to take on Russia, and we're going to do all these things. And people are like, yeah, I kind of like this, because Americans were pretty embarrassed that we got our ass kicked by this country, Iran, that we didn't know anything about. And then when we tried to do it, we couldn't even go rescue them with helicopters. They crashed and died in the desert.
Yeah.
And it was like, I remember that significantly. Like my buddies and we were probably 12 or 13. We weren't even in middle school yet. Like we were like, wow, we used to be good at we won World War II, and now we can't fly helicopters. Like I remember my buddies and I like being shocked to hear about that, So I feel bad for Carter. He had some really good things. He's probably, he like even his, obviously the biggest thing he did was the Middle East stuff, the peace stuff in the Middle East that he tried to do. But most of those guys got killed or lost power because nobody wanted that yet. Anwar Sadat got murdered. Like, I mean, like he was trying to do some things, but I just don't think he was just too naive at that point to be president of the United States of America.
Yep.
Like, he would have been a great French president or something, but probably not.
He might have been, if he would have not ran then and like ran in the 90s or something, and there was no Bill Clinton, he might have been, he might have had the success. We might have looked at him like we look at Bill Clinton.
He had no idea how to deal with inflation. Remember the gas crisis of the time, and
which set the table for
Reaganomics. At that time,
yeah, agreed.
But you're right. I mean,
and he also, you got to remember too, like he comes in what was it, 76, right? 76 to 80. We got off the gold standard 5 years before that. Yep. So again, he just came in at the wrong, wrong time.
Ahead.
Wrong time.
And I'm trying to remember, I'm trying to remember if he had control of the House and the Senate at that point. He might have only had control of one of the houses, and he just wasn't good enough at the art of politics.
Yeah.
And it was funny because when Obama got in, he had the House and Nancy Pelosi, another great American politician. Well, sorry, I should back up. She's a great American politician. She's very good at what she does.
Yes. Piece of shit, but
piece of shit. But
I know what you meant.
You know what I mean? Like,
good at the job of being a piece of shit politician.
Very good at raising money and getting people elected and maintaining power.
Yes, all of it. Yep.
But not good for us. But good for anybody. No. But then her and Harry Reid were like, listen, you can just sit down and we'll take care of things, Mr. Obama. He did not understand how much clout he had.
He did. He does.
He could have gone out and because Reagan would do this. Reagan would go out in front of people and he'd do it in such a way that make you look stupid. So politicians fell in line to because Reagan would make them look good if you worked with him. He's like, listen, just come and work with me. What do you need for your community? I'm going to make sure you get it in the budget.
Let me ask you a question because you're going down this road.
Obama wouldn't do it.
Do you think he has more power post-presidency than he had presidency?
More power?
Obama.
No.
You don't think so?
I don't think he has any connection with, I don't think the Democratic Party calls him up and says, hey, what do you think we should be doing here?
You don't think?
No, because I think,
you don't think he sent Pelosi?
He definitely,
he wasn't on that conversation. You're telling me
you're talking about when Biden
they did not consult Obama when they were deciding what direction to go. Do we stick with this dude?
Let me back up then. I think until the bad debate performance, I don't think Obama had any power. I think once the Democrats felt they were in trouble, then he gained power. So I think most of Biden's presidency, I don't even know where he's been. He's not been doing anything. But I think you're right.
Then who would have the power if he doesn't have the power? Who's calling the shots behind the scenes?
In the Democratic Party for Biden's administration, Biden's people.
Who are these people?
That's the problem, right? Because they're still running her campaign.
Because I think
it's not new people. It's the same people running her campaign that are trying to make her like the new version.
I thought you'd go that direction. So
she does have very few people that went into that came that are her people. That's why you haven't seen any changes towards young people. You haven't seen any major changes in policy towards Israel because they're the same people. They're the same Zionists that worked for Biden.
Biden does not win 2020 without what?
Without Obama supporting him.
More specifically, it wasn't him. It was South Carolina, and it was the I forget Clymer. I think it's Clymer in South Carolina. He's the one that like got it all together. That doesn't happen if Obama doesn't make a phone call. If Obama doesn't call those pastors and those prominent black leaders of the Black Caucus and say, yo, you got to make it happen for dude.
Okay.
He doesn't win 2020.
You got a good point.
So
I just don't think he's actively.
But you're saying Biden's people, right?
Yeah.
Which I agree with. Biden's people, in my opinion, again, I don't know because I'm not entrenched, but the theory that I have, Biden's people are probably a lot of the same people that were there for 8 years with Obama. So
Sure.
Obama would have sway over those people. And
Yeah,
he doesn't necessarily have to be pulling strings and calling shots.
Yeah.
But he,
I
if
think I read
Obama,
it more like
if
he was
Obama,
actively
no,
still
but I think
involved.
if a big decision happens, Obama gets, if a big decision is needed, I should say.
Yeah.
I don't think he's day to day. That's way down the conspiracy rabbit hole.
Right.
Like where like Obama's like in a room like with headphones like you are, and he's
Right.
like, do this, do that. No, I don't
Right.
think that's happening at all.
Okay.
But
No,
I
and I
think,
don't think even.
but
I think he
think,
checked out for a period
but
of
I
time
think
too.
every time there's a major decision, like I think when Ukraine got invaded, Obama got a call. I think when October 7th happened, Obama got a call, at least to get his feedback or what he
I
thought.
can believe that. And I think that and I'll back up. I think George Bush Jr. called his dad up and said, like, hey,
Yeah, I mean that would make sense. I mean,
but I still think they're calling former presidents. And I know that
you think Biden's calling Trump? You
no,
think Trump,
but I think
you think Trump was calling Obama?
But I think that I wouldn't be. George Bush probably called Clinton and asked him questions about stuff that was going on after 9/11. There's no doubt in my mind that happened.
That probably did happen, I would say, only because that was such a like Pearl Harbor moment that
Yep.
I think there was no, like, I remember because I was in my 20s at the time, like there was no political parties at that
And
point.
the Obamas
It
and
was
the
just
Bushes
for
liked
a
each other.
good year.
Yeah.
For a good year, there wasn't Republican and Democrat. There was just
Right.
like United States. Everybody was driving around beeping. They had, I remember I had it in my car, the "Wanna Dead or Alive" Osama thing.
Right.
People had flags driving.
yeah.
Like that period of time, I think politics went out the window. But I think for big moments now, like I don't think honestly, like there weren't any really major world stage moments for during Trump's presidency. We didn't get any
It's
conflicts.
interesting.
But
And
I
it's a
don't
good
think Trump. I
point.
don't think
Like,
Trump called any. I don't think Trump was calling. He definitely wasn't calling Bush for sure.
It's in it. No, definitely not. He didn't call anybody, and no one wanted to.
I don't
talk
think
to
he was
him.
listening to his own administration, let alone
No,
him calling out. And,
if he had an idea and he didn't like you, if you came at him, he's like he didn't know who you were and he fired you. He told you to quit. You know, he'd hire the best and brightest, and then 2 days later he wouldn't like them, which
I
is
know.
my problem because he's so petty about things. I will give Trump credit that he used the slide. He's like, "Hey, I didn't start any wars."
he didn't.
And
I would argue that his geopolitical, whatever the ideology was, kind of worked. I mean, it kind of worked.
It's a weird time frame for when he was there. I think his exit plans that Biden's people implemented, because it was a lot of the same military people. The exit of Iraq was terrible. I don't blame Trump or Biden specifically, but the people that they hired to do that job screwed it up.
Agreed. I agree with that.
But it would have been interesting. Like, I would wonder what Trump would have done when Gaza attacked Israel. I wonder if it'd be any different.
I'm more curious about what happens if he's president and Putin goes into Iraq or Ukraine. That I think is more, because he had a relationship, good, bad, or indifferent, with Putin, and there's no.
Well, he still has a relationship with Putin. Putin's not doing anything. He's going to keep this thing going and wait to see who wins this election. And Netanyahu's doing the same thing too.
I will be interested. Yeah, I will be interested to see more so with Iraq than Ukraine than I am with Israel. I think. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know what the conversation is if he wins January of 25, when he picks up the phone and calls Putin and says, "Yo, this, I don't know how you're going to do it, but like it's going to stop." Because number one, it makes me look good. What do you want? What do I have to give you? Because that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, well, that's
like, what do you need? Yeah. What do you need? And how do we make this look like I got a victory for that? I think that's easier. That's an easier play. Again, I have to be very careful because I don't want to get, kicked off the platform with my take on the whole Israel and
right. Yeah.
I don't want to say the word, but I think I don't think any one man has any sway over what we do in regards to Israel.
Well,
I think we are in a relationship with that country because of many different factors that no one person's going to come in and have any opportunity to stop. Republican, Democrat,
there's
doesn't matter, in my opinion.
we're in. Yeah, I'm careful about this too.
You have to be.
I do feel because like the equipment we just gave them, which is better
Which
than
country are we talking about?
Israel.
Okay.
The equipment we just gave them, the rocket shield system, I don't remember the name of it, which is better than the Patriot missile we just gave them. You could say things like, we're going to give you these, but you're going to stop burning people alive. Like, you're going to stop that. Like, or we're not going to give you things like
we can't.
but you can,
we can't.
because
No,
Reagan
you say
did.
we can.
But Reagan did. Reagan went to Israel when his administration and said, this shit's done.
Different time.
After the bombing
Different
of the Marine
time.
barracks,
there was
a change
40 years
in
ago.
policy.
Rich, that was 40 years ago. You have
agree.
people in power. I got to be really careful.
Yeah.
I tiptoe around this. You have people in this country in positions of power that you don't even realize that hold major sway in every facet of everything that we do that are not going to let Israel do what Israel wants to do.
And that is, like, people talk about the concern that they have that Putin has too much control and influence in the United States, but then they turn around and they don't think that Israel does. And okay, keep telling yourself that. And, the safeguards, they have to start finding a way to put in more safeguards. I'm not saying you completely cut them off, but you have to say, listen, this has got, like, you've got to change this type of stuff, because I don't know, whoever gets in there next, whoever it is going to have to deal with the fact that, are we sending troops to the Middle East, like, actively? I'm not talking about parking a naval ship and sending rockets and dropping throwing an F-16 in once at a time. I'm talking about, like, are we going to have active? Are we going to because first of all, you're having a hard time getting people to join the military already. I don't know. I think it's the next president, whoever it turns out to be, is going to have to really make some real hard decisions about those relationships.
If Trump wins, I think for 6 months that Ukraine-Russia conflict will be resolved. This Israel and Gaza situation, I don't know how that resolves itself without escalating.
It's going to have to escalate first,
because Iran, and it's like it's you have this weird dynamic of, like, volleying of missiles, going back and forth between Iran and, can you imagine if, like, Canada or Mexico, we were just, like, strategically, like, bombing certain spots and not getting in an all-out war over it? Like, it's wild to think that, like, it's almost like they're setting up behind the scenes. We're going to bomb these things and try not to kill people, but we're just going to show you that we got balls. And then we're going to do the same thing back. And it's just doing this. When does, like, one errantly do something that you, like, can't come back from, and you're just like, now we got to, like,
and that is the problem, because eventually we will get to that. And then it's okay. Now what do we do? And it's going to get, the situation has been awful for a long time, and it comes right down. And I don't want to get into it because it's way too complicated. And there's a lot more that people don't even realize that some of these countries do. And I'm not saying, like, I get in trouble once in a while because people are like, I'm like, I'm not saying I like Hezbollah or Hamas, but I think that there has to be some level of warfare. And if other countries did some of the things that some of the countries have been doing, and we saw it on the news, and it wasn't through the lens that we see, people will be like, oh my God, we have to stop that. I mean, go back to the late 80s with apartheid, when the United States, people in the United States became aware of what the way South Africa acted. Um, and musicians and TV stars and movies started portraying that, apartheid was gone very quickly. And other countries that use apartheid
Good
now
point. Yeah.
changed the way they did things so that it would be harder for what happened in South Africa to happen to them. And some of those rich people that lived in South Africa and realized they needed to get out, guess where they went? And did things differently to protect themselves so they couldn't get like canceled like they did when apartheid came down. I mean, I'm not gonna. It's, and what you're saying, why it's changed so much from the '80s. That's why, because those folks readjusted the way they did things, and now there's too much control and what we see in the media, and people don't really. It's there's too much influence, and I sound like a conspiracy theorist now, but I've spent a long time getting to this position. I didn't come up with it because I watched one, YouTube channel. I've been reading shit about this for a couple years now, even before the tax and last fall.
8 billion people on the planet, 14 million of a certain demographic, and they hold an exorbitant amount of power in many different positions. And that's not an anti-anything statement. That's just math.
Yeah.
I'm not making that up. You can look that, you can Google in the same systems that they own and see that. I'm not lying about that. So
no, you're not
when
wrong
you're
at all.
when you're looking at that and you're seeing it and you're realizing that, I'll just put it on, like, bring it back to like my hair. I'm Italian, right? So like something happens in Italy, I'm going to probably feel a certain type of way because I have lineage there, and
Right.
and anybody that's surrounding that, I'm going to have like a bias towards that. And when people start talking shit about Italy, I'm going to be like, why are you're talking about me? But they're really not. Like, I live in America.
Right.
I'm Italian, but I'm not Italian.
Right.
I've never been there.
So for example, in World War II, Italian Americans were not fond of Mussolini.
Right.
Yeah. Like, yeah. What are we doing? Why are we working with that guy? Like, and you felt bad for the relatives that were left there because many of them had their cousins and, brothers were forced to enlist in that army or Navy. So yeah, like, just because we're Italian doesn't mean I'm going to support everything that Italy does. Like, I'm going to have my own opinions, especially if they're doing something which is horrendous,
Yeah.
Just because I share, some DNA with them, doesn't mean that I'm going to support them. I don't know. Like, especially if their actions don't deserve my support,
Yeah, I mean, it all goes back to like an event that happened 70 years ago that I guess sways thoughts of. I want to be careful. I don't want to talk about, you know what I mean? But it's like,
right.
I guess if something like that happened to Italians, then we would always go back to, I don't know what,
I don't know why. You
have
to move past it, and you can't.
At some point, you have to use critical thinking.
The rest of your
you have to use
existence.
critical thinking and be like, you know what? Just because I'm associated DNA wise to something doesn't mean that everything they do can be. I have to support it. I can say, you know what? I love you, but like, fix that shit. Like, that's not. You shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
Can we do it different? Can we try something else? It's not working.
And you've seen that a significant number of folks that are in that situation do not support what that country chooses to do. And because they realize that it's hypocritical given what you're complaining about what happened 7 years ago. It doesn't give you a pass.
It also doesn't help, though, that you have extreme organizations who revert right back to that ideology that supports what they're saying the masses are doing. Because I don't think the masses think that certain way, but you do have these fringe idiots, these psychopaths that are forming, that do believe that stuff. And then it's because you have this small pocket of people that do, that gets spread across the masses that are critically thinking that, you know what? No problem with you as a person, human being, race, whatever, but like, can we have a critical conversation about like how we can do this different? And it's like,
Right.
no, you're anti this or you're anti that. It's like, no, I'm not anti anything. I'm anti stupidity and anti illogical. Let's do some
Right.
logical stuff here. Let's have a conversation. Can't have the conversation because everybody gets lumped in with these extremists over here that are lunatics. And it's like you have one critical thing to say, and all of a sudden you're that. And it's like this and this are nothing the same.
And the difference in our country now is, in my opinion, is that a lot of younger people don't aren't willing to accept the what the current generation administrations both sides are doing, and they're not going to just vote because of one topic where they see other things over here, and they're very the young people are very disappointed of that type of stuff. So they may not vote. There's a lot of young people that may not vote because they are not going to they don't want to be just because I'm a whatever, I should vote for a Democrat. And they're like, I'm just not doing that. They may, like you said, they may vote for a senator, they may vote for their mayor, but they probably aren't going to vote for Harris because they don't feel that she's really she may be younger, but she doesn't seem like she's going to change anything. And I think that's the same reason why she doesn't have a lot of support from like black males, because they don't feel like she's going to change anything. Like she's coming out with all these small business plans and blah, 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 that she wants to do all of a sudden. But like, I think there's a lot of people who are like, I'm not buying this again. There's a lot of young people that are willing to let it all burn down now. And hopefully we get something better when it all burns down. Like because in their minds, they've got nothing to lose because they're in their 20s, maybe 30, and they don't see that the government and the country is doing anything to support the fact with housing and wages and stuff like that.
I'll be very interested to see, because I mean, I'm a realist. I know they're going to, half the country's still going to vote, probably like 40 to 50% of the country will still vote. I know that, but I will be very interested to see the demographics breakdown of what you said. And I will be pleasantly surprised if I see a high number of sit outs in the
I would love it.
The millennial demographic you're talking about. Cause I know like people my age, my parents' age, they're going to vote. Like I get it. There's a lot of emotions tied to that right to vote and in old wars and all the, I get it. I respect all of that.
What I want them to do is vote, but not vote for that thing.
Yes.
Or vote for Harambe. Vote for,
Will
Ferrell.
Again, I want to be clear.
I want them to vote. Yeah. And with what were they doing in the one state where they were like uncommitted or something, where they were voting for lack of just uncommitted. They voted, but not for them.
Yeah, I want to clarify my stance. I've been saying
they may vote for Jill Stein just as a protest.
I've been saying not to vote, but what I really mean is that top of the ticket. Like, I don't want to tell people not to vote for their, mayors or senators or anything else that they feel that's going to have an impact on them in their local communities. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that voting for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, in my opinion, is voting for a continuation of the circus that we're seeing in politics in this country of identity politics, division. One side's perfect and the other side's the antichrist, and it's just not the case. And we're careening off the edge by continuing that. And I'm just not supporting that ideology by voting the top of the ticket. My hope is that people do get out and vote, but not for the presidential part of the election, at least for the demographic that doesn't feel the same way as the older generations do when it comes to that voting. I think if you're in your 20s or 30s and you look and you see the things the way that I'm seeing it, and you're just like, I'm not participating in this nonsense, and vote for down ticket, but sit out the top. And then we get the numbers back in January or February, and we're like 75% of 20 and 30-year-olds didn't vote in the presidential election. It's going to make the Republican Party and Democrat Party have to look at that and say, in 20 years,
how do
we are going to be screwed because we're not going to have anybody
young
voting.
People to vote.
Yes.
How do we get Hispanics to vote for our party? How do we get black males to vote for our party? And this is both sides. These are demographics that I think have been in for our lifetime have been just vote for us because you should. And you've been lumped in with the rest of the demographic that votes for us. And you should just trust us because we'll take care of you. And they haven't. So yeah, like I think that they're gonna have to, both either party, win or lose, they're really going to have, especially when you if some of the other races in the Senate and the House start to go one way or the other. If any incumbents, big time incumbents get knocked out, because some of those incumbents have tight races. It'll be
Elizabeth Warren, we
interesting.
talked about that. Yeah.
If some of them go down, then those parties are going to have to look at it and say, how do we become a more inclusive party? Maybe because in many ways, like right now, I think the Republicans in general, the presidential ticket is pretty far right, excuse me. And I think the Democrats, in terms of the presidential party, and people will disagree with me, but I think they're kind of center right. Like they're not very liberal. There's some, when you think of some of the things that, they haven't done anything. Like all the stuff they were going to do. Why didn't you do it for the 4 years that you've been there? Like they're not liberal. They're not really liberal.
I would disagree only because the first 6 months of Biden's presidency, he literally ripped up 100 different executive orders. He signed so many executive orders changing all the shit that Trump did. So he didn't necessarily do anything new. He just took everything off the books. And one of the biggest things was opening up that border the way that they did.
Right.
Did you watch? We're running out of time, but really quick. She was interviewed by Fox News yesterday. I don't know if you saw that.
Right.
Kamala. And she did not have a good answer.
No.
When he pressed her on, she kept going back to Trump as a bad candidate. And he's like, you guys in the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration changed everything that had to do with anything border-wise Trump. You were like, Trump is bad. So he literally said this, Trump bad, everything Trump, except for tariffs. And he said that for whatever reason, you decided to keep those. Everything else, Trump bad, so we take it away. So you open the border up and caused all of these problems that you're now saying you have the solution to that you caused. So why? Why did you do that? And she couldn't answer it. Right. And it's like that, again, they didn't do anything really new per se, but the first 100 days that they were in there, ripped up all the shit that he did, which was whatever, and made things much worse on many different fronts because they just didn't like. And this is the problem with Trump. Again, I'm blaming the Democrats partly, but I'm also blaming Trump because the orange man bad ideology has made even the things he did that was logical, and anybody on the left that was like, not Trump, a Republican, but it's not awful, we can keep that. They were like, no, Trump is the Antichrist. So because Trump signed that, we're changing it. And they made that mistake with the border. And I think if it didn't have to do with Trump, they would have taken a look at it and say, we got this thing with the border. He did some things here. We'll tweak that, but we're not going to make it open season where everybody's going to come over. And that was an enormous far left mistake that they made.
Sure, definitely. I agree with that.
And they did that in some other smaller spots. The border is just a big one, but they've done that in some smaller spots too, where they didn't necessarily do new things.
My point is they are not as nearly as liberal as people want to accuse them of being. In some certain ways, on some couple things here and there, sure. Couple statements, but most of them aren't law. They say things, but I don't think they follow them
fiscally up. They are. Where are you going to get $25,000 to give people new homeowners?
But I don't know if that'll ever happen.
It doesn't matter if it happens or not. I understand.
But it never happens.
I understand, but there's a huge tax sunset that's happening in 2026 that they're not talking about extending that will affect me and you. Yeah. And they want to keep talking about taxing the rich. Well, the highest tax bracket right now is at 36, and it's going to sunset and go back to 40.
Right.
That's a huge difference. 4% over, I think it's 190,000 a year. If you make $90,000 right now, in 20 years, you're going to be making 180 because that's how inflation is going.
Right.
So that's going to have a huge impact on your future income. That's going to affect when you're trying to pull money out of your withdrawals and retirement. Right. That's going to affect middle class, not the rich people. And the Democrats are tax rich. It's like, no, you're not. What you're doing is you're setting the tax farther out, and it keeps affecting us.
Right.
The middle class keeps moving because inflation keeps moving. So we're making more money, but the money isn't ahead the buying power, and we're moving up the tax brackets that you keep extending. You're extending the tax brackets on the middle class because you're doing neither side has a good plan for inflation, but it's affecting everybody. So now 30 years ago, making 40 or 50,000 was a big deal. Now you got to make 80 or 90,000, and pretty soon you're going to make 130, 140, and the tax brackets keep moving and the numbers keep moving, and we keep flying down that tax
Right.
code.
Okay. No, you're right. You made a good point, and I think I probably overstated it, but I think the Democrats Party is they don't they and if you're a true liberal, what you're hoping for them to do, they don't do, and that's that's
be
why
fair-
they're bringing in like Dick Cheney, who
To be
like-
fair, look at Trump's movement on abortion. You got a lot of people conservative wise that are not happy with his
right.
and I think he's doing what needs to be done on abortion. He's moving where he needs to move if he wants to win. But there's a lot of hardcore
Right.
conservatives that are like, you're moving too far to the middle. So I think prior to an election, both sides go center,
You're right.
and then you'll see
Right.
what they really are about if they get in.
That's a good point. Yeah. But
All right.
either way, you're right. Like, I wish we had more choices.
Yeah, when we don't, unfortunately. But
we
what
went
you
over.
can do, what you can do is not trust, verify. See you next week.